Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass podcast here on this Monday, May 19th edition. I'm your host, Jack Foster, joined alongside Ryan Shumpert, as always. Both of us in different locations this time around, and not as good of equipment this time around. So if the audio doesn't sound as good as normal, we do apologize, but we're making it work here on this fine Monday. And going to talk some Tennessee baseball, of course, coming off a series loss to Arkansas. Got some SEC tournament to preview. But first, Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I know you headed east on Interstate 40. I headed west. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be able to make it through here and get a little recap of the Arkansas series and preview the SEC tournament.
Yeah, and before we start with the Arkansas series, do want to talk about some awards that were given out today, I should say. Of course, talking about just season awards and stuff like that. Liam Doyle is the headliner, wins SEC Pitcher of the Year. I don't think this is a major surprise, but just given what he's done so far this year, 137 strikeouts. Dude's just been an absolute machine all year. This isn't breaking any news. 9-3 record on the year. 2.72 ERA. That was actually at 2.17 prior to the Arkansas series. Sub-1 WHIP. He was everything as advertised, and I think more this year for the Vols.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, I had it as in my preseason preview as my bold prediction that he would win SEC Pitcher of the Year. So I guess giving myself, Kevin from The Office, feels nice to win one.
Yeah.
Feels nice to win one moment, but even then, it felt like a bold prediction to me to say that at the time, which is to say, I thought Liam Doyle was going to be really good coming into the year. I think a lot of us thought that who watched him in the fall and in the preseason, but I think he even eclipsed all those expectations. You would say, in SEC over the course of the season, probably two bad starts at Alabama and at Arkansas. Certainly, his defense did him really no favors at all at Alabama, and there were some defensive miscues behind them at Arkansas against a really good lineup. And you mentioned those numbers on the year and those kind of going up. His SEC numbers ended with I believe a 3.51 ERA, and that was under 3 going into the Arkansas start. So really, it was two that weren't great, but really to me, just one bad start he had this past week at Arkansas. And just besides that, a fantastic season, and really been one of the consistent positives for this team, even amidst a handful week stretch where they've struggled.
Yeah, and Tennessee had a handful of really good players this year. You look at Gavin Keelan and Andrew Fisher, their first team All SEC, but it really felt like Liam Doyle carried this team. Like if you were to remove one player and it drastically impact the season for the negative, it would be Liam Doyle. If you remove Andrew Fisher, sure, it impacts it for the negative. Same thing with Keelan and Inslee, but none more than it would with Liam Doyle. He was the brightest spot for this team and a big reason why Tennessee was even able to, win games in SEC series down the stretch without Liam Doyle. Who knows how many times Tennessee could have gotten swept here in this last couple months.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And some of that is just can be the nature of the significance of a lockdown starting pitcher. I think you really saw that this year, almost in the opposite way to what Tennessee had last year, where they had an offense that could win any game for them and keep them in any sort of game, even when the starting pitching struggled for a good bit of the year. And you kind of see the reverse this year, where an offense that has struggled for good portions of the season, it has them in a spot where even though they were bad, really, the last 7 weeks of SEC play, that they are still going to be easily in the NCAA tournament, that they're not going to have to play on Tuesday in Hoover at the SEC tournament this week, that they're even on the outside looking in of being a potential regional host. That is so much of that is because of Liam Doyle and just how consistent he's been for Tennessee. And those 7 weeks down the stretch, the Auburn week was kind of wonky. They lost the game he started. He obviously threw only one inning. He came in and was a huge part of them winning what ended up being game 2 of the series 2 days later, pitching 2 innings and extra innings. The only other 2 games Tennessee lost with him on the mound was Arkansas this past week, and then LSU, where he threw 7 shutout innings and Tennessee blew a 3-0 lead in the 9th inning. So he consistently set the tone for Tennessee. and in a lot of ways is kind of the reason the sky hasn't actually been falling for this Tennessee team. And maybe that perspective is good to have because it's kind of felt like that for an extended stretch of how much Tennessee struggled and they haven't been able to get things back on track. But at the same time, if you can zoom out a little bit and take a view at things, Tennessee's made it a little bit harder on themselves in the postseason, but they still have every chance in the world to make it to Omaha. And so much of that is because of Liam Doyle and just the consistency he's really had week in, week out.
Well, his Ole Miss transfer counterpart, I should say, the guy who transferred to Tennessee with him from Oxford, also made first team All SEC. That would be Andrew Fisher. Led the SEC in home runs. He's, one of the top 4 players when it comes to SEC Player of the Year consideration. 30-37 on the year, 22 homers, 14 doubles, 55 RBIs. And it feels like Andrew Fisher really finished strong more than anything, too. And, I think when you looked at the beginning part of the season, it was okay. Is Fisher's power going to be here? He's getting on base a ton, but maybe isn't wowing as much as we would have expected him to. Well, he certainly wowed in the back half of SEC play, and rightfully so, gets a spot on this first team All SEC roster. And you talk about where would Tennessee be without Liam Doyle? Where would Tennessee be at all without its pair of Ole Miss transfers here? These guys were just massive all year long.
Well, I mean, we'll hit the next one in a minute, but 3 of Tennessee's 4 guys on the All SEC team were transfers that they brought in from a Division I standpoint, a 4-player transfer class. So, Tennessee did really good there again. And I think Andrew Fisher, you said it, and we talked about it, I guess, after the Auburn series where, I kind of said he's just been a little bit more quiet, but I think he is that bat in the middle of the lineup you have to just absolutely fear. And look, I'm a big conference stats guy. I think that tells the story a lot more than the full stats. And he was really every bit as good in conference play compared to SEC play, compared to non-conference play. In SEC play, slash line 340, 478 on base percentage, 736 slugging. So an OPS well over the 1,000 mark and 11 home runs, 9 doubles. Like he was just an all-around hitter, and I think that's what maybe stands out the most. More walks than strikeouts in SEC play. Like the power numbers, I think all knew were going to be there. He'd shown that at Ole Miss. We saw that in the fall in the preseason. But what a complete hitter he became. And what, I'd almost say good teammate, selfless too. Like we all thought he was going to play third base, and that's what he planned on playing. And he moved to first base because of Alex Perry leaving the team, Alberto Osuna not getting eligible. All that stuff shakes out. Maybe he's done it behind the scenes, but there's never been any sign to us of frustration or discomfort with him, basically. And he didn't really work at first much, at least when I was there in the preseason in the fall.
It was a very new position. I remember that was the storyline going in.
Very new position. And for a guy, which obviously the benchmarks kind of changed from third base to first base, but defense was probably the biggest question for him going into the season when we thought he was going to play third base. And he wasn't Blake Burke last year, good defensively at first base. He wasn't just elite, but it was not something, Tennessee's had a lot of defensive problems this year, and Andrew Fisher is not near the top of that list. So I think, obviously, the home runs are the most flashy thing. You said it, led the SEC in home runs. But to me, it's almost the other areas that I didn't know how good he would be, that he's been really good. That's impressed me the most about his season.
Yeah, for sure. And also something beyond what he's done, just statistical wise or on the baseball field, really. It's just that fire and that Tennessee baseball attitude that it felt like this team lacked at times, that will to win. I think Andrew Fisher really had that. Guys like Hunter Inslee have it too, Liam Doyle especially, but Andrew Fisher had that extra gear, and you saw it plenty of times this season. Let's move forward. Last 2 here, just lumping them in together with all SEC, the Vols who earned all SEC honors. Gavin Keelan makes the all SEC first team. Really impressive batting average all year long, 355 to close the regular season. Of course, the power was insane early on, but he finishes his regular season with 14 homers, 37 RBIs, and would have been more, of course, had he stayed healthy all year long. Had that couple week stretch where the hamstring kept him out of action. But Gavin Keelan, a huge part of this Tennessee team, has been its leadoff hitter the last couple of weeks. And then the other one to mention is Hunter Inslee, who lands on the second team and the all defense squad as well. So those two guys, it feels like Tennessee's largely been led by a handful of dudes, and these two are along with Doyle and Fisher up there.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't want to crap on the kid or anything like that. But I don't think Gavin Keelan deserved to be a first-team All-SEC guy.
I didn't want to bring up a negative here, but I was surprised he made it. But he's been good defensively. The average has been there all year. He's just been really consistent. But yeah, the SEC play numbers dipped a little bit.
It dipped a lot.
Felt a little rich. I agree.
Yeah, I would have gotten second team for the defensive standpoint and for how good he was in non-conference play, and the benefit of doubt, the fact that he missed 3 weeks with a hamstring injury. I think all of that, considering all of that, I wouldn't have had a problem with him on the second team. First team just feels like a reach. I mean, his SEC numbers just weren't very good. I mean, he hit 269, 7 extra base hits, 7 RBIs. Again, much smaller sample size because he missed those 3 series. And obviously still a really talented player, and he's been pretty consistently good defensively. Obviously had the one mistake this weekend. I'm sure we might talk about it a little bit more. But I was a little surprised to see him on there. And then Hunter Inslee, I mean, I think, again, just a testament. He lands on the all-defensive team too. A testament to his consistency. I mean, that was a question mark that we had coming into the year, or at least early in the season when he was hitting in the 3-hole. We were like, we know he's a really good bat. Can he handle – will he have what it takes to have the consistency to be in the 3-hole all season? And again, he didn't have a great weekend in Arkansas, but he's probably been right there behind Fisher, pretty close behind Fisher, Tennessee's most consistent bat. He has had a fantastic season hitting in the middle of Tennessee's lineup. Very consistent, very clutch, leads Tennessee in RBIs both in the entirety of the season and in conference play by a pretty wide margin too. On top of just being an absolute rock in center field, I think you could argue that he won Tennessee game 1 at Vanderbilt, along with Liam Doyle, with some of the things he did defensively and at the plate. And certainly he, has had the season worthy of getting all SEC honors, and has been one of Tennessee's best players.
This is obviously Hunter Inslee's last season at Tennessee. Would you say it's his best? Feels like he's been better than he was last year, and it's really just those 2 years. So,
yeah, I think from a complete standpoint, he has start to finish, and I guess we're not even to finish, so we'll see what happens in the postseason. But that's just so much of his story last year was he got so hot with 3 weeks remaining in the regular season, and the fact that he just carried all that over into the postseason, continued to rake, continued to give Tennessee a 6 bat that was just incredible last season on the way to the national championship. And then obviously the toughness, the plays he made defensively, the slide at home in the national championship game. I think when you and we'll see what the next month has in store. I think when you consider all of that, the stuff that people really remember, it has to be last year as his best season. But if we're just looking at it to this point completely objectively, whole body of work, it's probably this year. He's been a more complete player and a more consistent player this year. But man, he was dang good the last whatever it was, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of the season last year. And I don't think Tennessee wins a national championship without him.
That's fair. I still think Hunter Inslee was more needed this year. Tennessee needed Hunter Inslee a lot this year. The same thing with Doyle and Fisher. Really, those 3, I think Tennessee needed a lot. Fisher and Inslee at the plate, and just their mindset and their attitude in a way, their clutch gene, and of course Doyle with everything we've already mentioned. Those 3, it felt like Tennessee needed more than anyone else.
No, that's definitely true. He's been a bigger part of this team. Last year, we talked about it, he really didn't start hitting that well until the Florida series. Played his good defense as always, but Tennessee was still really good up until that point. So it's been, again, you could point to really any number of these guys we talked about and say if Tennessee didn't have them, they would be in a lot of trouble this year. But at the same time, the margins are just so slim when you're talking about winning a national championship. And I guess we can just doing some reminiscing here now on some fun stuff. But if Hunter Inslee doesn't do that, does Tennessee win the national championship? It was Xander Sechrest who had been an opener until the last week of the regular season, essentially, didn't turn into a consistent guy. As amazing as last year's team was, they probably don't win the national championship. So you're right. He's been more integral to this team. But when you're talking, he is still, I still think it's true to, or accurate to say, I don't know if Tennessee can win the national championship without what Inslee did last year.
Fair points. Well, let's quickly, well, not quickly, we can spend some time on it, but we're going to do an Arkansas series, kind of look back first before we talk about Hoover. Another series loss for Tennessee. I thought Tennessee competed well for the most part. Yeah, it was a different kind of storyline um, overall because when you look at the Auburn series loss, the Kentucky series loss, even the LSU series lost to an extent because of how bad game 3 was. It was a lot of, hey, Tennessee's offense, this is just a major problem. Like they can't do anything. And it was a couple of games each of these series, or at least one really bad. Tennessee's offense wasn't the problem this weekend. I know only 4 runs there in game 3, and 2 of them came late off of Fisher long ball. But hey, 38 hits on the weekend. That's the most hits Tennessee had in a single weekend all SEC season long. So I do think it's a little bit of a different script. And that is, it felt like Tennessee had a vintage offensive performance in game 1, maybe kind of stole that game a little bit. They deserved to win it, but it was a surprising win, at least for me, given just what each team looked like on paper going into that game and the way Tennessee won. It was very odd compared to what we've seen Tennessee look like. And then you have all the confidence in the world. You can pick up a road series win with Liam Doyle on the mound in game 2, and it's the worst Doyle was all year. 11 hits allowed, 6 runs, I believe, earned 8 total. So it was just a confusing night for him there on Friday as the series evened. And then I think, as no surprise, is that Arkansas was able to win game 3. Tennessee's just struggled in these rubber games. Arkansas is the better team. I think we all kind of saw that coming. Once Tennessee lost game 2, it felt like a really, uphill battle to win the series.
No, no doubt. I agree with all that. I think there's a lot of frustration in the sense that you win game 1 and then you don't win with Liam Doyle on the mound because of what we talked about. But I think just as a whole of the series, I think my takeaway in a lot of ways, or maybe not takeaway, my assessment is like so many of Tennessee's series losses, Vanderbilt with the runners in scoring position,
Mm-hmm.
and the defensive mistakes, LSU with blowing game 1. It was a lot of like you leave it being like, man, Tennessee just can't get out of their own way. They've lost the game because of these mistakes or their issues. To me, this weekend felt more like they just lost to a better team on the road. Like don't get me wrong, there were some mistakes that Tennessee made. There's some things you want to clean up, but the hitting was good. The bullpen, look, it's not a very good bullpen, so like it wasn't great overall. But by this bullpen standards, it was pretty solid this weekend. So I think when you kind of consider all of that, to me, the frustration wasn't necessarily in how Tennessee played. The frustration was like, man, that was a bad time to get a bad Liam Doyle outing, and you lost to a better team on the road.
Yeah. 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 It's just frustrating that the Doyle outing comes when you probably needed a normal Liam Doyle outing the most. Like, hey, hosting chances are on the line here. Road series win against a team that's had your number for years. Get that monkey off your back and away for Tony Vitello. And it just doesn't happen when your best player has his worst day of the year. So I think it's a tough pill to swallow, but you're right. It was not as ugly of a series loss. You mentioned the bullpen. The worst bullpen performance happened in the win, and that was Nate
Yep.
Snead, who comes in and, you know, it was a decision Tony made, like final 6 outs. Who you going with? You going to keep Tanner Franklin in the game after he got the final out in the 7th? Or are you going to roll with Nate Snead, who's been your guy last 2 years, rolls with Snead. Dude gets absolutely rocked, and it looks like Tennessee is going to blow this game. But Cannon Peebles with huge 2-run homer there in the 9th. Abernathy with a 3rd insurance run with some good base running. But beyond Snead, I don't really think there was a particularly bad bullpen performance. Breedlove, who gives up a crushing grand slam in game 3, looked great in game 2. It just wasn't maybe the right call to go to him in game 3. So some things to like, as you said, with the bullpen. Franklin threw well. Arvidsson, maybe his best weekend of the year,
Yep.
looked really good. So yeah, it's just kind of how it went. And like you said, there's not really a huge takeaway for how what was the worst thing for Tennessee this weekend. It was just kind of a collection of little things that built up.
Yeah, no, I think when you talk about the bullpen, and I want to hit on the kind of the last statement you made too. To me, it's almost a combination of where some of the fringe guys I thought had good weekends. I mean, you mentioned it. To me, Arvidsson's best weekend of the year. Breedlove, maybe Tennessee got a little greedy going back to him in Game 3 to try to get that out.
I mean, it kind of lost him the game. So it's like, man,
Yeah,
it's that one play.
yeah, but even with that, you saw more from Breedlove this weekend than you have in any other SEC weekend.
Very
Um,
true.
and then AJ Russell one, like I think AJ Russell, it goes two ways. Of he looked pretty dominant, and I don't know, maybe some of this is just me watching on TV, having a better angle of seeing the movement. But fastball was in the upper 90s early in his outing. A lot of movement. Looked to me the closest he's looked to 2024 AJ Russell all season, pre Tommy John, pre injury.
Okay.
Now, the other side of it, to why it's not maybe leading the show, because if he had done that for 5 innings, you still saw the fastball. By the time he got to like 40, 50 pitches, you saw the fastball velo dropping to 92 and him starting to get hit a little bit. So it hasn't gotten to the point with Russell to where I'm like, all right, this is a guy that can get you 15 outs in a start or a weekend or something like that. But I do feel better now than I have at any point in the season in AJ Russell being a guy that gets you 6 or 9 outs in a relief appearance and looking pretty darn shut down, or at least very difficult to hit while doing it. So to me, when you go to Vanderbilt and when you go to Arkansas now, he's had his two best outings the last 2 weeks. And I do think that's a positive sign for Tennessee's pitching staff as we enter the postseason.
Last 4 appearances for Russell: 37, 45, 48, 43 pitches. So he's been around the same ballpark. 1 and 2/3, and then 2, 3 and 2/3, then 2 were his innings pitched in those 4. It just feels like right now, I felt like this has kind of been what we've said each of the last couple of weeks. Hey, Russell looked really good for this amount of time, but then it just quickly kind of went away. And it's not that he's looking terrible when he's exiting games. It's just you can tell there's a difference when he gets to a certain point. And maybe it is that 40 pitch count or a 45. It just feels like he has a ceiling to him right now. And I'm not sure if that ceiling is going to be lifted at all. Maybe this is just who he is. Like you said, a 6 to 9 out guy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. Because it's not that the breaking ball is bad, but it's the fastball. That's why he's a potential first round pick, is the fastball. So when that isn't 95 plus with that movement, he's just gonna. It doesn't mean he can't be pitchable. It can't mean he can't pitch around some situations, but he's not going to be dominant when that's the case. So, no, I agree with that. I would just say, to me, the last 2 outings have had a definitive different feel than maybe the first 3 did in SEC play.
Okay. I would honestly think that the last 2 have felt similarly, but I get what you're saying. Like,
No, I'm saying the last 2 have been similar to one another.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
but different from the first 3.
Agreed. Definitely different from the first 2.
Yeah.
That Auburn one was all right too. Just that one more so went awry. It did. Went wrong quicker than the other 2. Right.
Yeah. No, you're right about that.
All right, fun exercise here. Rank your trust level with Tennessee's bullpen arms of these 5: Franklin, Snead, Russell, Krenzel, Loy.
Russell 1, Loy 2, Snead 3, Franklin 4, Krenzel 5.
Snead's still 3.
Yeah, I'll just ride with him. Like, you're right. He's been worse, definitely, than Franklin, and probably. Yep. I mean, Krenzel was better this weekend too. The walk thing has me a little hesitant. He walked like 4 guys, and
that was weird.
2/3.
Yep.
2
2 2/3.
2 and 2/3. Him, how shaky he's been since coming back, and the freshman out element entering the postseason. To me, he's a definite 5. And I'll give Snead the benefit of the doubt and go with him over Franklin.
Look, I'm a Nate Snead guy through and through. You know that, but Thursday was tough. I mean, Thursday was so
It
tough.
was. I mean, this is maybe the most telling thing. Tennessee doesn't get those insurance runs.
They lose the game.
It did not feel like they were going to win the game. Yeah.
It would have been tied. It would have been 7-7. And there's no way I'm taking Tennessee in extras.
And I mean, even that, like you're looking at it from what ended up happening, which I don't think you can necessarily do from just like the vibes of it, but it goes the other way. Like I would have felt worse about Snead's ability to get 3 outs if it was a 1-run game.
Yes.
Just I think the energy changes with Tennessee having scored those 3 runs to make it a 4-run game. Yeah.
I mean, he has a 5.81 ERA in conference play.
And I do think some of it's like what they're asking of him. Like if they were asking Nate Snead to do what Dylan Loy, which everybody knows we're Loy boys, rise up, Snead would probably be higher. Like if they were asking him to get 1 or 2 outs a lot and maybe pitch an inning, I would feel better about him. I think his numbers would be better and he would be more effective. I think some of it is he has become, for good reason, because he was largely just last year, like the do-it-all guy out of the bullpen. I think that has, made his numbers, and he is the guy that they trust, so they let him pitch through some stuff that maybe they don't let other people pitch through. Has made his numbers look worse, and just it's felt worse because of that. I mean, it's been worse because of that. I'm not trying to say the numbers are necessarily lying in the situation. I just think the trust factor has maybe led to him taking more earned runs on, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I've just been trying to think about how does this get fixed? How can Snead's role be altered to where
it can be?
It benefits both parties. And I'm the only thing I can think of is just a clean ninth, like only 1 inning.
Yes, but they can't. You're right. That's it for Snead. Like that's where I would feel good. What he did against Vanderbilt in game 1.
Exactly.
Empty the tank. But Tennessee doesn't have the pitching to do that. Unless AJ Russell finds more.
Well, I think they could have done that on Thursday. Franklin could have gone the 8th inning.
That's true. They could.
Now you may get dicey in game 3 if you're just trying to, which, the format of how things are going to go is obviously going to change in the postseason. But
no, you're right about that.
Yeah.
And I would have let Frank. To me, it was such a risk to have Snead throw 2 innings because they'd used everybody else. The only other guy left was Krenzel.
Yeah.
I mean, I think our guy Sam Smith tweeted it at me where before Tennessee scored the runs, it was like pitch Tegan Kuntz. Put Tegan Kuntz in. Who cares about it?
Got to win this game.
I mean, it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen, but like I kind of agreed. I think I made the joke to somebody. I said, put Tegan Kuntz in here, try to get the win. You win tomorrow with Liam Doyle on the mound. Go ahead and head to the airport on Friday night. Say you guys got game 3. We're not worried about it. Like that's how it felt because I mean they used Loy and Franklin both for 1 out, if I'm not mistaken, on Friday or Thursday, game 1, and it was just like you're living or dying with Snead here, and living and dying with Snead in 1 inning. I feel good about living and dying with Snead in 2 innings. It gets a little dicey.
I couldn't agree more. And, I think Dylan Loy the narrative with Dylan Loy hasn't changed much. I think he's a guy who can get you a couple of big outs in a given game, but, can also struggle with giving up some really home runs, but still a guy we trust a lot. Ryan, you had him second in your list, right behind AJ Russell, which I agree with to a certain extent. I just would trust Dylan Loy to give more extended relief than Russell at this point, but
you would?
Yes, I would. If you said, hey, one of these guys has to throw 4 innings right now, I'm picking Dylan Loy.
That's crazy to me.
Really? Russell hasn't he hasn't shown he can do it. Dylan Loy just did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but they just don't seem to trust him in that role to me. They ask him to do that infrequently when there are in real competitive games.
I just don't think he's gotten the chance to do it a lot.
Yeah,
Tony loves to play him in matchups so much that's kind of it sometimes. given a longer leash and just been like, hey, we're going to ride you, I think he'd do better than Russell would for a longer stretch of time.
So you think there's almost like a crossover between, or maybe not, but like an out or two, Loy, 2 innings, Russell, 4 innings, Loy? Or would you just say Russell and then to a certain extent Loy? Or is it just straight up Loy all the way that you would trust more no matter how many outs you need to get?
Oh, no, 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 no. Yeah. I think if I had to have someone, that's tough. Yeah, I'm not sure. If I have to have someone close the game, is that kind of what you're getting at? Like really high leverage spot, 3 outs.
Yeah, sure. That works for the scenario.
I mean, AJ Russell's more talented, so I guess I'd go with him. But I just
Okay.
think he has a ceiling right now. So,
Yeah. No, that's fair. And it would be interesting to see what how Loy's role would change if there was a second left-handed arm they trusted.
hmm,
If Andrew
that's
Binky is just what Andrew Binky was last year and
yeah,
was a solid lefty specialist, would they play Binky more in those lefty matchup situations and unleash Loy a little bit more in longer outings?
right.
I don't know.
And
It's a question we don't know the
Arvidsson's
answer to, but
yeah, Arvidsson's not a specialist type pitcher, but
no.
maybe he can get more valuable outs moving forward and can be more consistent because, like we said, best weekend for him was last weekend.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because he's by far the next best left-handed bullpen arm, but he doesn't really have that specialist type stuff and walks, which I thought was the most encouraging part of this outing. Didn't walk anybody in 3 innings. Like that's kind of been his downfall. It just doesn't feel like he's from a command standpoint. You can trust what you're going to get out of him every time out.
Probably we should hit on Phillips and Coons before we move on. Phillips did a much better job at, stabilizing the run game. Was looking over a lot. I thought he was really solid there in the Thursday night start. 4 1/3, gave up, a few runs, walked a few, but it wasn't perfect. But I thought, hey, with what Marcus Phillips's Achilles heel has been, he did not let that be a factor in that game. And of course, Arkansas is not as good as stealing bases as some other teams Tennessee's faced, but at least there was progress made in that department.
No, you're absolutely right. It was a good step in the right direction. I would like to see it against a team that's a little more aggressive on the base pass, just because
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas is not that. Um, but it's what we talked about last week, like the process of it. Not having the exact timing every single time when he throws a pitch, or when he looks over and then throws a pitch. Like it felt like he alternated that stuff, which is the stuff that is completely controllable, and the stuff that Tony Vitello and Tennessee staff's been wanting him to do. So I thought that was maybe even more significant than just like the no stolen base numbers, because I don't think Arkansas was going to steal a ton of bases. I mean, look, that lineup's really, really good. So it's kind of like we've talked about with some Tennessee offenses in the past. You're not going to be aggressive on the base pass when you got a really deep, really powerful lineup. And certainly Arkansas wasn't going to do that either. So I thought he threw the ball solid, big time step in the right direction, and I'll be curious to see. I would assume he'll throw. I mean, we'll talk about this in a minute, but I'm assuming he would throw against Texas on Thursday if Tennessee wins on Wednesday. So I'll be curious to see what it looks like then, and then obviously it's going to be a major storyline for Tennessee going into the NCAA tournament.
Right. Tegan Coons, just really quick, a couple of hits he gave up in the first inning led to a run. Really nice 1-2-3 inning in the second. And then everything just fell apart in the third. Not all to his fault, though. There's a really weird balk call that put Davalon at second after he had led off the inning with a single. Tony Vitello was not happy about that one. Chris Burke didn't understand it on the broadcast, so don't really know what happened there with the balk. And then there's a fielding error on Curley that just leads to a run scoring, and then there's a stolen base. There's back-to-back walks, and just Coons had kind of lost it there after the defensive mistakes and the weird balk call. And then, of course, Breedlove comes in and gives up the crushing grand slam, which all but one run go on Coons. So that's why the line looks so bad. But yeah, it feels like there's not been a more unlucky pitcher this season than Tegan Coons when it comes to mistakes behind him.
Yeah, no, it does feel that way. I think that look, I had two things I want to hit on, and this is one of them. Like they kind of tie together. Yeah, that was just actually, I'm gonna go in this direction first. Sorry, I'm hodgepodge of thoughts in my brain right now. I thought Dean Curley was awesome at the plate this weekend. To
Yep.
me, this was his worst weekend at second base since he's been
Yeah, I'd say
there.
so. Yeah, he hasn't
Yeah,
really had many bad plays, so yeah.
yeah. I mean, he struggled there this weekend. And that's just it. It feels like the ball call. Look, I do not understand the ball rule extremely well. Never have. It's never been something that's made a ton of sense to me. Like what is and what isn't. I don't know. That seemed like a completely normal pickoff attempt.
Yep.
I
Well,
trust Chris Burke's judgment of it.
that's the other thing. The runner was out too.
Oh, he was
Yeah.
out, and then you have so that call felt obviously big at the time. It felt massive as a routine ground ball was headed to Dean Curley, and the runner was already going to get to third with one out because it
Mhm.
was so routine. There wasn't hardly a thought about
Nope.
the play not being made, and then it goes through his legs, and it's just all these issues for Tennessee. And I've said this probably a dozen times on here. They just compound. The issues compound. That happened. Those two things happens. Tegan Kuhns walks two straight batters. Day's done. Grand slam. Boom. Game's away from you. Just like
Yep.
that. Game's away from you. Game's not over. But to that point, and I forget the reliever that came in for Arkansas and shut Tennessee down and was telling them to F themselves. But Tennessee didn't show any signs of offense for like 3 innings after that. And I feel like that's a consistent issue for this Tennessee team too, where things go bad defensively for the pitching staff, and there's just never, not never, I shouldn't say that because it literally happened in the ninth inning on Friday or on Thursday night, and they probably don't win without it. But too little does it happen where Tennessee's offense really responds quickly and can bring the juju, the momentum back in Tennessee's favor. So that was the thing I was going to say, and then I'll tie it into another point too. Sorry, I'm rambling, but the where we're talking about it, the bullpen was good this weekend by the bullpen standards. The hitting was good this weekend. Even with Liam Doyle struggling, they played a good game on
Yep.
Friday night. Could have easily won, and then you just had the one mistake in the fifth inning. Gavin Keelan, 1 out away from getting out of the inning, bad throwing error, run scores on that play, another hit, another run scores, 2 run score off of that. Tennessee loses the game by 2 runs, where it's just like there's been so many issues for Tennessee this season that even on a weekend where they somewhere between minimized and vanquished a lot of those issues, they still weren't able to truly overcome it just
Yeah.
because those other mistakes just showed up. And this team does not have that big of an error or that enough room for error to get away with that, at least against really good teams like Arkansas.
Yeah, that's the big thing is against these good teams, you can't allow that to happen, especially while hey, probably had your best offensive weekend in SEC play, but it's not going to be any weekend. It's not going to be just so good to where you can allow all this to happen. You have to play sharper, and Tennessee just continues to struggle in that department. Let's shift gears here. Let's talk some Hoover, Ryan. So Tennessee's first game bright and early Wednesday, right? 9:30 a.m. local time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern against the winner of Alabama and Missouri. If they win that one, they play Texas on Thursday, as you said. How far do you think Tennessee goes in this SEC tournament?
Oh, I'll pick them to lose. I'll pick them to lose their first game. I'll be
One
Mr.
and done.
Negative. One and
One
done.
and done.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you're picking them to lose to Alabama.
Yes. They won't lose to Missouri, but I'll pick them to lose to Alabama. To me, that game feels like a toss-up, but I'll pick them to lose that one. I don't know what you think. To me, my thought is AJ Russell opener would be my guess as to what they would do on Wednesday, followed
That
by a
makes
kind
sense
of
to me.
a bullpen game.
Yeah.
Marcus Phillips on Thursday. Um, I'm not honestly not even like I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world for Liam Doyle just to get the week off, even if they
Okay,
were to
but
win both those games.
hold on. If Tennessee wins the first two games and goes into Friday, I mean, hosting a regional is on the table, right?
Yeah, it would go to Saturday, so they'd be in the semifinals
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
they divided quarterfinals in 2 days. Like I would think so. Like I think making the finals would give them a pretty realistic chance. So I'm not saying don't throw them. Like I think from a competitive standpoint, you probably have to throw them.
Right.
And look, I don't know. I have nobody has said anything. I have no inside information here as to whether his blister or his hand was bothering him. against Arkansas? No clue. No idea if that was the issue at all. My thought's just been they've asked him to do a lot. He's been throwing a lot of pitches. He pitched twice in one weekend. We know he's had a blister issue that's been reoccurring. They're going to need him in the NCAA tournament. That's going to be more important to what happens in Hoover. I'm not saying they should do that. I'm just saying I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if Tennessee loses one of their first two games and they go back and have a week and a half to get everybody rested up and most importantly, Liam Doyle.
Yeah, I agree that a week off would do him good, and of course, it maybe be a blessing in disguise if Tennessee one doesn't have to throw Liam Doyle because they lost, but also two has just played so much better on the road. I mean, you look at their last two road series. Sure, they lost them, but they should have won that LSU series, barring that absolute meltdown in game one. They do, and then Arkansas. Hey, we've just talked about how Tennessee maybe played its most complete weekend in a month and a half. So they could
Yeah.
have won this series. If Liam Doyle is just regular Liam Doyle, they probably do. Or maybe if one mistake just doesn't happen. So they were close, those two road series. Whereas at home, Vandy was better, but Kentucky didn't feel close. A&M in that doubleheader was terrible. Auburn did not feel close in their two losses. So maybe it is a blessing in disguise for Tennessee just go on the road anyway. And I don't know how Tennessee would view that. I'm sure they obviously want to play at home, but maybe deep down, Tony would echo that sentiment as, hey, maybe that's what this team needs. And I'm sure it would be nice for this coaching staff to see Liam Doyle not have to throw a week and really get right heading into the most important time of the season.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I think it's a good debate on whether this Tennessee team would be better off going on the road or not. I think in some ways it probably would be better for them. And I don't know if I know we've talked about it off camera. I don't know if we talked about it on here where to me, the big downside of going on the road is you got to throw Liam Doyle game one. Whereas you can maybe try to get a little greedy at home playing a 4 seed, pitch somebody else, save him for game two. But even though, I mean, we've talked about that kind of opens up a can of worms of issues because do you want Marcus Phillips, who struggles to hold runners, pitching against a 4 seed, who's probably going to be really aggressive on the base paths?
Yeah.
Bullpen game feels like you're really, or even you start Tegan Kuhn would be the alternative if you're not going to start either of those two guys. But just the way Tegan Kuhn has been, it's kind of naturally going to be a bullpen game. You're kind of playing with fire, and you might have to use a lot of guys that you would like to have the rest of the weekend. So I don't know. That to me would be the one really big positive of playing at home. And I'm sitting here saying I'm not sure you'd even really want to do it. And I think the big thing with playing on the road potentially is just where they send you. This isn't the NCAA basketball tournament where the field seeded 1 through 64, and
Right.
you're going to get the worst. You're going to get the 16 seed. You might, that was D1 baseball's projection today.
Georgia Tech.
Had Tennessee playing Georgia Tech, which I think would be a great matchup for them. But we know they like storylines too. They could send them to Florida State. I think that would be a tough matchup. Regionally, they could send them to North Carolina, who's projected to be the number 4 overall seed. They could send them to Clemson, who's really good. So I don't, it's hard to. There's a couple things on both sides of it of being better for Tennessee to go be at home, being better for Tennessee to go on the road that you just can't really project for differing reasons. But obviously, the latter one just being the NCAA doesn't tell us anything about how they view these teams, and there's no real consistent logic for how they seed the regionals.
Yeah, like 2 years ago, Tennessee was not a bad enough 2 seed to where they would have gone to 4th overall seed Clemson.
Yep.
That was unlucky for Clemson to have to get that good of a 2 seed, considering where they were. But like you said, it's not an exact science. Hey, remind me, Tennessee was projected to go to West Virginia, Morgantown Regional a couple of weeks ago, the most previous projection before Georgia Tech. Was that also paired with the Austin Regional?
Yes. Yep.
So each of these last two projections, Tennessee's been paired with Texas for potential supers matchup.
Yep, and I mean that's where it goes both ways. Where you get an easier regional, you're probably going to have to match up with a better team in the super regional. Whereas, I mean, that's what worked to Tennessee's advantage too in 23. They did have to play Clemson, but they found a way to beat number 4 Clemson. Number 13 Auburn got upset, and they had to go to Hattiesburg to play obviously a good Southern Miss team, but not some overwhelmingly difficult super regional matchup either.
Some good supers luck last 2 years for Tennessee.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, really, really good supers luck last year, for sure. Getting one of the last teams in the field getting a 4 seed. So, yeah, we'll obviously see what happens, and it'll be very curious to try to just to see what happens, because I feel like the projections are generally no fault to the people that do them, but generally less accurate in baseball, at least compared to basketball, and certainly compared to football. Football's not that hard to do.
Well, 8 seed Tennessee baseball in the SEC tournament will play Alabama or Missouri bright and early Wednesday morning. We'll have full coverage on RockTopInsider.com for that. Before we get out of here, Ryan, any last notes?
No, I don't think so. Actually, I do have one last note I wanted to get to. Let me pull it up. Shout out Dalton Barco. He didn't get any postseason honors. Not even saying he should,
Yeah.
but he's been great for Tennessee. I mean, you just have a full body of work now in SEC play. He hit 312, 988 OPS, 11 doubles, 7 home runs. He's just been, he started the season really rough. Like we were very down on him and felt like he's maybe getting passed by after the first couple of weeks. And all the dust settled, and you got into SEC play when competition got better, and he was not only one of Tennessee's best 9, he was one of Tennessee's best hitters, period. So great season for Dalton Bargo. I feel like he's flown under the radar. He certainly is not, it was overpowering or just like wowing as some of those other guys at the top of Tennessee's lineup, but he's been really steady, and he's been exactly what Tennessee's needed from him.
Yeah, and Tennessee doesn't win game 1 at Arkansas without him. So
yeah, 2 home runs.
That's right. Well, that's Ryan. You can follow him at rshump00. I'm at Jack Foster Media if you want to give me a follow. And of course, follow at Rocky Top Insider on all social platforms. As I mentioned, RockyTopInsider.com is the destination for all postseason Tennessee baseball coverage. It's crazy to believe we're already in the postseason. This season flew by, but now's where it gets really fun, and we can see if Tennessee can turn things around and make a postseason run. For Ryan, I'm Jack. We'll see you next time on the RTI Diamond Pass.